So I wanted to talk a little bit about healthcare. This is something that I often talk about at work. And it's funny when a lot of the patients that we take care of typically don't take care of themselves. And a lot of that results from the free healthcare system. Only 25% of Medicaid, Medicare is actually paid for through the person. People say, oh, I pay with my taxes. You don't. Most of it, 75% of the healthcare costs are just printed. The government prints the money and then pays the hospitals. Only 25% of the healthcare costs are actually associated with the person who's responsible for their health. And that's why you see people talk about, why is it that the obesity rates are so high? They'll show like some picture from like the 70s or the 60s, of a beach scene and everybody's, lean. You don't see the obesity rates. It's because the healthcare is free. That's why. Because the responsibility comes when you pay. When I didn't have health insurance, when I was living in New York, I was still working as a nurse. I was working as a nurse and I didn't have health insurance. And I came home one night. I went out to a bar or a lounge, and I came home and I passed out on my couch. And I woke up and I bumped my arm against the couch and it felt particularly tender. And I was like, oh, did I bump into something last night? I was out drinking. I was like, maybe I didn't know I bumped into something. Maybe I got a little bruise on my arm and that's where the tenderness was coming from. That wasn't it. I felt it. I was like, oh, it looks red. I touched it. It was warm to touch. I was like, oh, might have a little infection there. Went to the doctor and the doctor was like, do you have health insurance? What's your insurance? And I was like, I don't have insurance. This was around the time where like Obama was like penalizing people who didn't have health insurance, then you had to pay, right? And I was paying out of pocket for my doctor visits and for my antibiotics that I needed that day. And she was just like, hopefully the antibiotic, the oral antibiotics works because, if the infection progresses, etc., that's going to be pretty expensive. And so from that point on, I just started saving a lot of money. I save, like 15% just in case for health-related reasons. It's just tucked away there just in case something happens. I don't have health insurance till this day for that reason because I have enough cash put away in case something happens. Maybe I got to fly to Mexico, right? Get it cheap. But when people don't have to pay for their associated costs, the consequence of not managing your health is not felt by the individual, right? The cost of going to the doctor. I recently went to the doctor when I was in Ohio. I didn't even see a doctor. I saw a nurse practitioner. And it was like $300 for the visit. I'm like, what the hell? I was like, you're not doing anything for me. All I needed, and I didn't even get they gave me like a 7-day prescription of azithromycin, which is just a broad spectrum antibiotic that in Colombia or in Mexico, I just literally walk over to the pharmacy, and I ask the pharmacist, let me get, 3 days worth or 7 days worth of azithromycin or whatever antibiotic you want. There's no gatekeeping. You just go to the pharmacist and they give it to you. But in America, I had to go and pay this exorbitant price just to see the doctor. And that forces me into the gym. Take care of myself. Don't go around drinking, don't smoke. Don't go out there, sleeping with all these women, putting yourself at risks. Because the cost, right? That cost, it comes out of my wallet. When they said $300, I was like, for what? You didn't do anything. I was literally in there like 15 minutes because there was nothing wrong with me. I just went in because there was like some bug going around with the food and I was having bouts of diarrhea, and I already knew I'll take Imodium, slow my diet down, and make sure I stay hydrated, have some Pedialyte or Gatorade, and that's exactly what they said. And I just wanted to make sure, and that was the cost. The cost of making sure and getting the antibiotics didn't do anything because it was more than likely just like a virus going around. Antibiotics not going to do anything. But that was the associated costs. So here I am coming back from the gym, right? Because I'm in the gym 4 or 5 times a week. I'm lowering my weight. That's the cost. It's my personal cost. Now, the reason I bring this up is because I was taking care of this woman, obese lady, COPD, history of smoking. She wasn't a diabetic, but she did have coronary arteries and all these other issues, right? And I'm looking at her tray because she gets her dinner. I'm looking at her tray and she's eating French fries. And this is provided by the hospital. The hospital is feeding this lady French fries. I was taking care of a diabetic patient, and we have to do a carb count for her insulin, right? This lady was on an insulin drip, and they can't get her sugar under control. Her dinner tray was 100 carbs. Her dinner tray was 100 carbs. I'm like, I don't even have that in a day. If I have 30 carbs in a day, that's high for me because I mostly eat protein diet. I have high protein, and maybe I'll have some vegetables. And then I only eat once or twice a day. These people in the hospital eating 3 times a day, full course meals in the hospital. The other thing, I go down to like the lounge areas or the cafeteria because you want to eat, maybe grab a snack in the middle of the night. It's all shit. It's all garbage. TV dinners. And this is they were giving TV dinners when I was in the hospital for the patients that come from the emergency room and they come after the kitchen is closed and they want to get something to eat. They're like, here, we got a TV dinner for you. I'm like, holy shit. This is what we feed people in the hospital. The people come to the hospital for health. And the most important aspect of your health is what you put inside your body. And it's been this way for it's been this way for a couple of years now. When I first became a nurse, that was one of the biggest things that they used to always push us to put into the heads of our patients about diet, exercise, especially for diabetic patients. I don't see that anymore. That's why America is so fat. That's why 80% of Americans are overweight, and why 43% of Americans are obese, and why 10% of the country, 43 million Americans, 34, I think it's 34 or 43, I forget off the top of my head, are diabetics. And they were complaining to, what's his name, to the president, to Biden, about the cost of insulin. If you remember that, right? That was a big thing where Trump lowered the rate of insulin and then Biden removed it and then I'm going to give it back to you, all this bullshit. 95% of all insulin use is related to type 2 diabetes. The number one symptom, right, for having type 2 diabetes is obesity. And most of the insulin use goes to treating type 2 diabetes, which is related to obesity, which is related to your weight. So there's a business. There's a business of revolving people. I was like looking at this lady's tray. I was like, who feeds her this shit? No vegetables, no fish. It's just they give these people all carbs in the hospital. And then they can't figure out, oh, America, best healthcare system in the world. I'm like, really? Then why is the country so overweight? And people will blame the pharmaceutical company. Oh, it's their fault. It's all the pills that they make me take. And it's like, no, it's all the shit you put in your body. Because you get propagandized to. Oh, you got to eat 3 meals a day. The food pyramid, which is a joke. But it's been this way for so long. And people just don't want to take personal responsibility. They enjoy all that eating. The cakes, the breads, all the fatty foods, the butter. And then on the back end, they want to cry to the government, save me, save me, save me from myself. And then I talk about this all the time. What people don't want is they don't want personal responsibility that comes with living life. And that's why the countries, and especially in the West, are going the route of authoritarianism. When you want someone to feed you and to clothe you and to take care of you and make decisions for you, it's like, yeah, they got a place where they do that. It's called jail. And that's what people want. When the Israelites left Egypt, right? When Moses brought the Israelites out of Egypt, and then they heard all these spooky noises in the wilderness, and they were like, what do you mean we got to take over this land and we got to fight these people for our birthright? And the people were complaining. And they're like, shit, life was better in Egypt. They had the pots of meat, the Bible recounts. But they were slaves, and they preferred it. and yet God set them free. And the same thing happened again in Christianity, where the people were in essence a slave to the Mosaic law, where they had to do all of these rituals and rites and offer sacrifices. And it was all foreshadowing of a people who would be personally responsible for their worship to their Creator. It wouldn't be just handed to them. You had to perceive, the Bible says, the will of God. It wasn't just a series of do's and don'ts, because God was already past that. That was infancy. That was why the Apostle Paul said, when I was a babe, I thought as a babe. But now that I have become a man, he changed the way he lived his life. And people today just don't want to take personal responsibility. The same thing happened during the pandemic, when they said, if you don't take it, you can't go to our grocery stores, you can't go to our schools, you can't have one of our jobs and one of our businesses. And I was like, well, you buy your own land. Now you have to now you have your housing taken care of. You have your own land, you can grow your own food. Now you don't have to worry about going to the supermarkets. You homeschool your children. You live in the country, away from the cities, from the conveniences of life. But many people, like the Bible says, how Moses was not. Where Moses went out, he was living the life of a prince, and he went and lived in the desert. Why? The Apostle Paul said, because he didn't want to enjoy the temporary enjoyment of sin. And so he went and lived as a man who herded animals, and became a great man that we speak about even today, where you have multiple religions. Almost, I want to say, 2/3 of the planet are the sons of Abraham and Moses, between the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims. We are all their sons from the men that came before us, only because these men chose to be personally responsible. That's the message for today. Anyway, back from the gym, time to eat. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Here in Omaha, Nebraska, where we're snow, and what is it? -6. -6 here. Tomorrow or tonight, it's supposed to go down. They said with the wind to like -40. Let them off. I'll be inside. Anyway, I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.